We all know that words have power, right? They can build someone up, make them feel incredible, or they can leave these invisible scars that honestly can last a lifetime. So today, we're going to get into the really profound and often unseen impact that a parent's words can have on their child. But before we dive into the heavy stuff, let's start with a really fundamental question. What's the absolute bare minimum? What is the one thing every single child everywhere should be able to expect from the people who brought them into this world? And the answer really is that simple: love and care. That's it. That's the bedrock, the foundation that every kid deserves. But as we're about to see, that beautiful ideal, well, it isn't always the reality. And here is that harsh reality check. In just 1 year, over 50,000 kids in the US were officially counted as victims of emotional abuse. Think about that. And that's only the reported cases. The actual number, well, it's probably way, way higher. So this is the crucial point right here. The way parents act, and especially the words they choose, they are literally the building blocks for their child's entire personality and self-esteem. Whether a parent means it or not, those hurtful words can leave these deep psychological marks that shape who we are for the rest of our lives. So let's dive into our first category of these really damaging phrases. These are the words that go right for the jugular. They attack the very core of who a child is. And we'll start with the most direct attacks, the ones on a child's physical appearance. It could be about their weight, their height, a facial feature, anything. But these comments are so much more than just mean. They're incredibly destructive. They embed this feeling of just not being right from the one person whose approval matters more than anything. And the fallout from this, wow, it's profound. It completely warps how a child sees themselves. Instead of learning to love their body, these words plant these little seeds of insecurity that can absolutely grow into serious issues, like eating disorders. A parent's job is to build a child up, not tear them down over how they look. The damage isn't always from a direct insult like that. Sometimes it's more subtle, kind of hidden inside a sarcastic question. Why do you act so weird? Or why do you chew your food like that? These aren't real questions. They're criticisms designed to make a child feel ashamed for just being themselves. And the psychological hit from this is huge. Kids tend to believe what their parents tell them. So these little digs make them feel like their natural self is just fundamentally wrong. And that can trap them in this state of deep discomfort and fear well into their adult years. Okay, this is probably one of the most toxic things a parent could ever say. Phrases like, "I regret having you," or even worse, "I wish I had an abortion." These are just deeply selfish wishes that attack a child's very right to exist. And there's really no way to soften the blow here. Words like these can just completely demolish a child's identity. They start to believe that they don't even deserve to be alive, which can tragically spiral into self-harm and serious depression. Okay, the damage continues in our next section here. Undermining a child's worth. Now we're going to look at phrases that tell a kid, either directly or indirectly, that they're a burden and they're just not good enough. These kinds of statements basically frame the child as the source of the problem. They're a drain on money, on time, on energy. It's taking very adult problems and just dumping them onto the shoulders of a little kid. So what's the result of this? The child starts to feel like they are a burden. So they learn to just suppress their own needs, hide their feelings, anything to avoid upsetting their parent. And this can lead to this deep unconscious guilt for just existing. Oh, and comparisons. This is another really powerful way a child's worth gets chipped away. When a parent says something like, "Why can't you be more like your brother?" they're not just crushing self-esteem. They're actively pitting their own kids against each other. The message, no matter how it's phrased, is always the same. You, as you are not enough. And that can create lifelong resentment and insecurity. And then, of course, there's the direct verbal abuse. These are absolute statements, labels that define a child as a total failure. Things like, "You're a loser," "You're useless." These aren't just words, they're weapons. And it's the exact opposite of what parenting is supposed to be about, isn't it? It should be about encouraging your child, helping them believe in themselves, not programming them for failure by stamping these hopeless labels on them. All right, for our final category, we're going to explore how certain words and actions can just shatter the most important element of the parent-child relationship: trust. Threatening to abandon a child? It's a terrifying form of emotional manipulation. Telling a kid, "You'll wake up one day and I'll be gone," plays on their deepest, most primal fear, being left all alone by the person they need for survival. And this creates severe, deep-seated abandonment issues. The child grows up with this unconscious belief that anyone they love will eventually leave them. And that fear, it can sabotage their ability to form healthy, trusting relationships for their entire life. Now, this next one might not seem as dramatic, but making promises and then breaking them is incredibly corrosive. It creates this constant pattern of getting a child's hopes up and then just delivering disappointment over and over again. Think about it. Empty promises are basically a direct lesson in how to mistrust people. They systematically teach a child that words, especially from people who are supposed to love you, just can't be relied on. And ultimately, the child learns that betrayal is just a normal, expected part of any relationship. So, after looking at all of these really painful examples, what's the big takeaway? It's that these words, they don't just disappear after they're said. No, they echo. They echo throughout a person's entire life. Our childhood is the essential chapter that really sets the stage for everything else that comes after. The words we hear, the lessons we learn, they build the actual framework of our personalities, our behaviors, and what we believe about ourselves and the world around us. And that leaves us with one last, really critical question to think about. This is for parents, for future parents, or, even for those of us just looking back on our own past. If our childhood is the construction site for our inner world, we have to ask ourselves, what are we building with our words? Are we laying foundations of strength, or are we just leaving behind ruins?